Hello and welcome to Relatable Code. In this video, we're going to be talking about the protected keyword in Kotlin. So let's get started. So, what is the protected keyword and how do we use it? Well, the protected keyword is like a combination of the private and the public keywords in Kotlin. Okay? You define the protected variable or function inside your open or abstract class, and you can use it inside your subclasses only. Okay? So if I define a protected variable or a function inside the open class, I can access it inside my subclasses, but I can't access it anywhere outside my subclasses in my main method, for example. And I'll give you an example. Okay? Let's say we have a protected val borrowed items equals mutable list of library item. Okay, our library item is the abstract class, which is implemented by our magazine and our book as well. So here we created a mutable list of library item so that we can keep track of the items that this customer has borrowed so far. Okay. And here we're going to be defining a protected function so that I can show you how it works. So I have not private, I have a protected function get number of borrowed items, which just basically returns the borrowed items dot size. Okay, I have an error here, and we have to provide a return type which is of type integer. Okay. And now we have a protected variable and a protected function. How do we use them? Well, they are visible in the subclasses of customer. In our case, standard customer and premium customer as well. Okay, so let's say here I have a function provide recommendations, which is just a public function for our standard customer. This public function will check the number of borrowed items, and based on that, it will provide some recommendations for our customer. So I can write something like if I can directly access get number of borrowed items directly inside this subclass because it extends customer, our open class, which defines these protected keywords. Okay. So here I can say, for example, if the number of borrowed items is greater than 5, print line recommend a larger book, else print line recommend a smaller book. Okay, that's basically it. And now we have to provide a way to borrow an item for this customer. We can do it like that. We can have function borrow item. It will take as a parameter the item which will be borrowed, in this case a library item. And what will happen is borrowed items dot add item. Okay, that's basically how I borrow an item. And we can have another function to return this item like this. Item, also library item. And we can have borrowed items dot remove item. Okay. That's pretty basic. We have a list. When we borrow an item, we add that item to that list. When we return that item, we remove it from the list. And in our standard customer, we have a certain function called provide recommendations. It accesses our get number of borrowed items. If it's greater than 5, I recommend a larger book for our customer. And if it's less than 5, I recommend a smaller book. Let's provide an implementation in the main method. Like this, we don't need our premium customer for now. Let's say we have standard customer dot borrow item, and here I want to show you something. Because borrowed item or borrow item expects a library item, we can pass either a book or a magazine directly. Why? Because both book and magazine extend this library item. Okay, so in some terms, they can substitute this library item because they extend it. So when our function expects a a library item, we can just pass a book like that, and our book now expects a title, our borrowed book, an author, and a price. Now let's call standard customer dot provide recommendations. Let's run our main function. And here we can see recommend a smaller book. What if we borrowed 6 books and we run our function again? Now we recommend a larger book, but pay attention to something. Inside our customer class, we have a protected function, get number of borrowed items, which we could access inside this subclass standard customer. But if I try to access it inside my main method, like this, standard.get, we don't have an implementation for get number of borrowed items because it's protected. Okay. Same goes for borrowed items. We can't really reference them here. We only have reference to the borrow item because it's public. But our borrowed items can be accessed inside our subclass standard customer. Okay. That's basically the concept behind the protected modifier. Very often you want to use this access modifier because you don't want it to be exposed outside the scope of customer, at least, except in the subclasses that implement this customer. Okay? And just to let you know, what we did here with the borrow item function is an example of polymorphism in Kotlin. And polymorphism is a very interesting concept in object-oriented programming, and it's very powerful. The word polymorphism itself, if you break it down, you have poly, which means many, and morph, which means forms. Okay? In our case, we had a library item, and our library item was extended by our magazine and our book as well. So it had many forms, if you want. Okay, it could take the form of a book, and it could take the form of a magazine. So when we called our borrow item function, we had the flexibility of passing a book or even a magazine. And as you can see, we don't have an error here because our borrow item expects a library item. Okay, polymorphism is a very powerful concept, and it really saves you a lot of code because if you hadn't used it like that, you would have had to define a function borrow item for a book and a borrow item for a magazine as well. Okay, which increases your code a lot, especially if there are a lot of classes that may implement library item. Okay? If you find my examples to be relatable, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe for future content, and I'll see you in the next video.